Chapter 1. I came home early that night and saw my husband kissing my own sister in our living room. But that was not even the worst part, because just days later, I found out they had been draining thousands of dollars from our joint account while pretending everything was normal. And the truth that destroyed me the most was not just the betrayal, it was realizing they had planned it all along. And I'm Claire, and this is the story of how I lost my family, my home, everything I thought was safe, and how I made sure they lost far more than I ever did. I used to believe that stability was something you could build if you just tried hard enough. In 2023, my life in Charlotte, North Carolina looked exactly like that kind of success. Not the flashy kind you see on social media, but the quiet, dependable version. I was 35, working as a veterinary technician at a small clinic just outside the city. It was the kind of job where you knew the regular clients by name and remembered which dogs needed peanut butter to get through a checkup. It did not make me rich, but it paid the bills. It felt safe. My husband, Aaron Blake, worked in sales for a regional shipping company. At least that was what I believed. He left every morning around 8, came home most evenings around 6, sometimes later if he said he had a client dinner. We had a routine. Dinner together when we could, television in the background, small talk about work, plans for the weekend that we did not always follow through on. It was not a passionate marriage, not anymore, but it was steady, predictable, and for me, that mattered more. I did not grow up with stability. I learned to value it the hard way. My older sister, Lauren, had always been the center of everything. She was 2 years older, prettier in a way people noticed immediately, louder, more emotional. My mother, Carol, had a soft spot for her that she never tried to hide. If Lauren made a mistake, it was because she was hurting. If I made one, it was because I should have known better. I remember one afternoon when I was 12 and Lauren had crashed my mom's car into a mailbox. She came home crying, mascara smeared, shaking like the world had ended. My mom wrapped her in a hug and kept saying it was okay, that accidents happen. Later that night, when I forgot to take the trash out, my mom stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed and said I needed to start acting like the responsible one because someone had to be. That was the role I grew into. The responsible one, the reliable one, the one who did not cause problems. So when Lauren called me in early 2022 and said her marriage had fallen apart and she needed a place to stay for a while, I did not hesitate. Of course you can stay with us, I told her. Aaron had agreed without much discussion. He said it was temporary, a few weeks, maybe a couple of months, just until she got back on her feet. At first, it felt like we were doing the right thing. Lauren helped around the house sometimes, she cooked a few dinners, she laughed more than I remembered, filling the space with energy that felt almost comforting. I told myself this was what family was supposed to look like. The first sign that something was off was so small I almost ignored it. It was a Thursday morning. I remember because Thursdays were surgery days at the clinic, which meant I had to be in earlier than usual. I was making the bed in a hurry, pulling the sheets tight, when something metallic caught the light. A small earring, gold with a tiny stone. It wasn't mine. I held it in my palm for a second longer than necessary, turning it over, trying to place it. I didn't wear jewelry like that. I barely wore any at all. Lauren did, though. I walked into the hallway where Aaron was putting on his shoes. "Hey," I said, holding it up. "Do you know where this came from?" He glanced at it for maybe half a second before shrugging. "Probably got stuck on one of my shirts from work. You know how it is. People hug. It happens." The answer came too quickly, too smoothly, but it also sounded reasonable enough that I let it go. I told myself I was overthinking it. A few days later, I saw the message. Aaron had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he went to take a shower. I was rinsing out a coffee mug when the screen lit up. I wasn't trying to snoop, I really wasn't, but the message preview was right there. Last night was perfect. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. My hand froze on the edge of the sink. For a second, I just stared at the words, waiting for them to rearrange themselves into something harmless. They didn't. I dried my hands slowly, picked up the phone, then put it back down almost immediately. My heart was beating too fast. It could be a wrong number, I told myself. It could be someone from work. It could be anything. When Aaron came back into the kitchen, I acted like nothing had happened. "You have an early meeting today," he said, grabbing his keys. "Yeah," I replied, keeping my voice steady. He kissed me on the cheek, quick and distracted, and walked out the door. I stood there for a long time after he left, staring at the counter where his phone had been. That was when the doubt really started to settle in. It didn't explode all at once. It crept in. Aaron started turning his body away when he used his phone. Not dramatically, just enough that the screen was no longer visible. He took calls in the other room more often. Sometimes he would step outside, saying the signal was better. His schedule began to feel less solid. He mentioned meetings that didn't quite line up with what I remembered from before. He came home later, said traffic was bad, said a client ran overtime. None of it was enough on its own, but together it formed a pattern I couldn't unsee. Lauren changed too, in quieter ways. She avoided eye contact more often. If I walked into a room unexpectedly, she would go still for just a second before forcing a smile. Conversations would drop when I entered, then pick back up with a different tone. One night, the three of us were sitting in the living room. Some show was playing in the background, something none of us were really watching. I tried to keep my voice casual. "Lauren, do you remember where that gold earring in the bedroom might have come from?" She blinked, then laughed lightly. "I lose jewelry all the time. Could be mine," she said, waving it off. I didn't even notice it was missing. Her answer came just as quickly as Aaron's had. Too quickly. Aaron shifted beside me, reaching for the remote, turning up the volume as if that ended the conversation. I let it drop again, because the alternative felt too big to face. I kept telling myself the same thing over and over. You're imagining things. You're tired. You're making connections that aren't there. That's what people like me do. We explain things away to keep the ground from shifting under our feet. But the ground was already moving. About 2 weeks later, I tried asking Aaron something simple. "Hey," I said one evening while he was taking off his jacket, "did you go to rally today or was that tomorrow?" He paused for just a fraction of a second. "Tomorrow," he said. That was not what he told me the day before. It was such a small slip, something anyone could forget, but I didn't forget. Later that night, after he fell asleep, I sat in the dark with my laptop open, scrolling through old emails. I found a forwarded itinerary from months ago, something he'd sent me when we were planning a trip. I stared at the company name, the contact details, the structure of his work. I realized how little I actually knew about his day-to-day life. That thought unsettled me more than anything. Not the message, not the earring, the fact that I trusted so completely that I never thought to look closer. The next morning, I started writing things down. Just small notes at first. The time he left, the time he came back, any mention of where he said he was going. I kept it in a notes app on my phone. Nothing obvious. I told myself it was just to ease my mind. If everything lined up, I could let it go. If it didn't, then at least I would know. Lauren watched me more carefully after that. I could feel it, like she was trying to read what I knew without asking. Once, she started to say something in the kitchen, then stopped when Aaron walked in. "Never mind," she said quickly, turning back to the sink. The silence between the three of us began to feel heavier, like there was something sitting in the middle of the room that no one was willing to touch. I went through the motions of my life: work, home, dinner, sleep. But underneath it all, I was paying attention in a way I never had before. Every word, every glance, every inconsistency. And for the first time in my life, I stopped assuming the best. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Because something inside me knew that once I said it out loud, everything would change. So instead, I watched. And I waited. Chapter 2. The next morning, I opened a new note on my phone and titled it something simple. Something that would not raise questions if anyone ever saw it. Groceries. It felt almost ridiculous, but that was the point. I started logging everything. What time Aaron left the house, what he said he was doing that day, when he came back, any small detail that felt off. At first, it was just a few lines. 8:12 a.m., left for work. Said he had a client meeting in South Charlotte. 6:47 p.m., came home. Said traffic was bad. Nothing dramatic, nothing that proved anything. But I kept going. After a few days, patterns began to form. Or maybe it was just that I was finally paying attention. Aaron started leaving earlier some mornings, saying he had early calls. Other days, he lingered, scrolling on his phone before heading out, like he was waiting for something. One evening, I tried something small. "So are you still heading to Raleigh this week?" I asked while we were eating dinner. He nodded without looking up. "Yeah, probably Thursday." I took a slow bite, pretending to think. "I thought you said Wednesday." He paused, just for a second. Then he shrugged. "Plans changed. You know how it is." His tone was casual. Too casual. I nodded, like I believed him. "Okay." But I wrote it down. Later that night, after he fell asleep, I went back through my notes. The inconsistencies were small, but they were there. And once I saw them, I could not unsee them. Lauren started noticing me noticing. She would watch me when she thought I was not looking. Sometimes I would catch her staring, her expression unreadable. Then she would quickly look away and ask something random. "Do you need me to pick anything up from the store?" she asked one afternoon, leaning against the kitchen counter. I shook my head. "No, I am good." She nodded, but did not move right away. It felt like she wanted to say something else, but whatever it was, she swallowed it. The air between us felt heavier every day. A week later, I found the email. It was not something I was actively searching for. I had logged into our shared laptop to print out a schedule from the clinic, and Aaron's email was still open in another tab. I should have closed it. Instead, I scrolled. Most of it was what I expected: old client threads, generic company updates, things that meant nothing to me. Then I saw a subject line that made me pause. Workforce restructuring update. The date was from late November. I clicked on it. The email was from his company. It talked about downsizing, restructuring, eliminating positions across multiple departments. I read it twice. Then I checked the recipients. Aaron's name was on the list. My chest tightened. That email was from months ago. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to remember everything he had told me since then. The meetings, the late nights, the business trips. None of it made sense anymore. When Aaron came home that evening, I watched him differently. "How was work?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Same old," he said, dropping his keys on the counter. "Busy day." "Busy doing what?" I almost said. Instead, I smiled. "Sounds like it." He kissed my forehead and walked past me like nothing had changed. But everything had. That was when the money started to bother me. At first, it was just a few charges I did not recognize, a restaurant I had never heard of, a bar across town. Small amounts, nothing that would set off alarms on their own. I told myself it could be work-related, client dinners, team outings. Then the charges kept coming. Different places, same pattern, and then the cash withdrawals. 300 here, 500 there, sometimes more. I opened our bank app one night while sitting in my car outside the clinic, my hands resting on the steering wheel. I scrolled through the transactions slowly, my stomach tightening with each one. "Why are you taking out so much cash?" I asked him that night, trying to keep my tone neutral. He barely looked up from his phone. "Just easier for some things, you know." "What things?" He shrugged. "Just stuff. It's not a big deal." It didn't feel like nothing. It felt like something I was not supposed to understand. A few days later, I found a hotel charge. It was local, not even 20 minutes from our house. The date was a Tuesday. "You were out late Tuesday, right?" I said the next morning while we were getting ready. "Yeah, client dinner ran long," he replied. "Where was it again?" He hesitated. Uptown, that steak place. I nodded slowly. I checked the charge again later. It wasn't a steakhouse. It was a hotel. That was the first time I felt something shift inside me. Not just doubt, not just suspicion, something colder. That night, I almost said it. We were sitting on the couch, the television on, Lauren in the kitchen behind us. I could hear her moving dishes around. "Aaron," I started. He looked at me. "Yeah?" I opened my mouth. Then I closed it. "Never mind," I said, forcing a small smile. "I forgot." He studied me for a second, like he was trying to figure something out, then nodded and turned back to the screen. My heart was pounding. I was not ready. Not yet. Because once I said it, there would be no going back. So instead, I kept watching, and I started planning. A week later, I told Aaron I was going to Raleigh for the night. My friend Melissa had invited me over, I said, packing a small bag. I might stay late, maybe crash there. He barely reacted. "Okay, just text me when you get there." Lauren was standing in the hallway when I zipped up my bag. "Drive safe," she said. Her voice sounded normal, maybe too normal. I smiled at her. "I will." I left the house around 6 in the evening. I drove for almost an hour, just enough to make it believable if anyone checked. Then I pulled into a quiet parking lot, turned off the engine, and sat there. The sky was already dark. My hands were shaking. I stared at my phone, at the notes I had been keeping for weeks. Times, places, patterns, all of it leading to this moment. You are about to find out the truth, I told myself, and you might not be able to handle it. I started the car again around 10:30. The drive back felt longer than it should have. Every mile felt heavy, like I was moving towards something I could not stop. When I turned onto our street, the house looked the same. Lights on in the living room, everything quiet, normal. I parked a few houses down and sat there for a minute, staring. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it. This is it, I thought. I got out of the car and walked slowly toward the house. Each step felt deliberate, like I was trying not to make noise, even though I knew it did not matter. When I reached the front door, I did not open it right away. I looked through the narrow gap in the curtains. The living room light cast a soft glow across the floor. And then I saw them, Aaron and Lauren, standing too close, closer than anyone stands unless there is something between them. I felt my body go completely still. For a second, nothing happened. Then Aaron leaned in, and Lauren did not pull away. They kissed. It was not hesitant. It was not accidental. It was familiar, like it had happened before. Time stretched in a way I cannot fully explain. It felt like I was watching something from a distance, like it was not my life, not my house, not my husband, not my sister. I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not even breathe. I just stood there, watching, long enough for the truth to settle into something solid. Then I stepped back, quietly. I turned around and walked back to my car. I do not remember getting in. I do not remember starting the engine. I just remembered driving. The road blurred in front of me, lights stretching into lines, everything distant and unreal. My mind kept replaying the same image, the way they stood, the way they moved, the ease between them. This was not new. By the time I stopped driving, I was parked somewhere I did not recognize. I turned off the car and sat in the dark. My hands were still shaking, but my thoughts were starting to come back, slow and sharp. I could go back and confront them. I could walk in, turn on the lights, force them to explain. But what would that change? They would lie, or they would admit it. Either way, I would only have part of the story, and I needed all of it. Not just what they did, but how long, how far, and what else they had taken. So I made a decision right there in that car. I would not confront them. Not yet. I would go back, I would act normal, and I would watch more carefully than ever. Because this was not just about betrayal anymore. When I got home later that night, the house was dark. No lights, no voices, like nothing had happened. I walked inside quietly, set my bag down, and went straight to the bedroom. Aaron was already in bed, asleep or pretending to be. Lauren's door was closed. I lay down beside him, staring at the ceiling. My chest felt hollow, but my mind was clear. The next morning, I opened my banking app before I got out of bed. I started going through every transaction again. This time, I wasn't looking for random charges. I was looking for a pattern, and I found one. Every week, without fail, there were withdrawals. 5,000, sometimes 6, always spaced a few days apart, always just under the amount that would trigger alerts. I stared at the numbers for a long time. This was not careless. This was planned. I locked my phone and sat there in silence, because now I understood something I hadn't fully seen before. This was not just about them being together. This was about everything they were taking while I was still standing in the same house, believing I was safe. Chapter 3. The next few days felt like I was walking through something that had not fully happened yet. I moved around the house the same way I always did. I went to work, came home, made dinner, asked simple questions, listened to simple answers. On the outside, nothing changed. But inside, everything had already shifted. I kept tracking the money, every withdrawal, every charge. I printed out statements at work during my lunch break, highlighting anything that did not make sense. 5,000, 6,000, again and again. By the time the first week of January came around, I had enough. Not just suspicion, not just a feeling, proof. That morning, I did not go to work. Aaron was in the kitchen pouring coffee when I walked in with a folder in my hand. Lauren was sitting at the table, scrolling on her phone. I placed the folder down in front of him. "We need to talk." He looked at the folder, then at me. "About what?" I opened it and spread the pages across the table. Bank statements, dates, notes I had written in the margins. About this. Lauren went still. Aaron's expression changed, but only slightly. "What is this supposed to be?" he said. "You tell me," I replied. 5,000 here, 6,000 there, every week. Hotels, cash withdrawals, and all of it while you were supposedly at work. He leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms. "It is not what you think." I let out a quiet breath. "Then explain it." Silence filled the room for a moment. Lauren stood up. "I think I should go," she said softly. "No," I said, my voice sharper than I expected. "You should stay." She froze where she was. Aaron rubbed the back of his neck, then let out a short laugh that did not sound like anything close to humor. "You really went through all this," he said. "Answer the question." He looked at me for a long second. Then something in his face shifted. Not guilt, not regret. Something closer to relief. "Fine," he said. "You want the truth?" Lauren closed her eyes. Aaron exhaled slowly. "I am not happy, Claire." The words landed flat. For a second, I thought I had heard him wrong. "What?" "I have not been happy for a long time," he continued. "I did not know how to tell you." I stared at him. "So instead, you lied. You stole money. You brought her into this house." His jaw tightened. "It is not like that." I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Then what is it like, Aaron?" He hesitated. Then he said it. "It started a while ago, with Lauren." The room went completely still. I turned to look at her. She was staring at the floor, her hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Say something," I said. She shook her head, barely. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she whispered. I felt something inside me crack. "Like what? You didn't mean to sleep with my husband. You didn't mean to take money from me. Which cart was the accident?" Tears filled her eyes, but she did not look at me. Aaron stepped in before she could answer. "We were going to tell you." I looked back at him. "When?" He did not answer. "After you took everything?" I said quietly. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration creeping into his voice. "It is not everything." I pushed one of the statements toward him. $18,000 in 3 weeks? What do you call that? He glanced at the paper, then away. "We needed it." "For what?" He hesitated again. "To figure things out." I felt like I could not breathe. "You needed my money to figure out how to leave me?" Neither of them spoke. That silence said more than anything else could have. I nodded slowly. "Okay." I gathered the papers back into the folder with steady hands. "Okay," I repeated. Aaron looked at me, something uncertain finally flickering across his face. "What does that mean?" "It means you should go." He blinked. "What?" "I heard you. Pack your things, leave." Lauren looked up then, panic breaking through. "Claire, please, we can talk about this." I met her eyes for the first time since he said her name. "There's nothing to talk about." Aaron frowned. "This is my house, too." "It was," I said, "before you emptied our account." For a moment, I thought he was going to argue. Then he looked at Lauren. Something passed between them, unspoken but clear. "Fine," he said. He walked past me toward the bedroom. Lauren hesitated, then followed him. I stood in the kitchen, listening to drawers opening, closet doors sliding, the quiet sounds of a life being packed up and carried out. It did not feel real. After about an hour, Aaron came back into the living room with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Lauren stood behind him with 2 suitcases. He stopped in front of me. "This is not all on me," he said. I almost laughed. "You are right," I replied. "It is also on her." Lauren flinched. Aaron's expression hardened. "We will figure things out," he said. "We just need time." I stepped aside, opening the front door. "Take all the time you want, just not here." They walked out without another word. The door closed behind them with a soft click. And just like that, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, waiting for something to hit me. Anger, grief, anything. But at first, there was nothing. Just emptiness. That emptiness did not last. By the next morning, it was replaced with something else. Panic. I opened my banking app before I even got out of bed. The number on the screen made my stomach drop. Almost nothing left. I sat up, my hands shaking as I checked the savings account. Same. I checked the credit card. Nearly maxed out. "No," I whispered. I grabbed my phone and called the bank. After navigating through automated menus, a woman finally picked up. "Thank you for calling. How can I assist you today?" "My accounts," I said, my voice unsteady. "There have been withdrawals I did not authorize. I need to stop them. I need to reverse them." She asked for my information, her tone calm, professional. I gave her everything. There was a pause as she pulled up the account. "I do see the transactions you are referring to," she said. "Yes, those are not authorized. I need them reversed." Another pause. "Ma'am, this is a joint account. Both account holders have full access to withdraw funds." My grip tightened on the phone. "So you cannot do anything?" "I am sorry, but under the terms of the account, the transactions are valid." Valid. The word echoed in my head. "But he took almost everything," I said, my voice breaking despite my effort to stay calm. "I understand this is frustrating," she replied gently. "If you believe there has been fraud, you may want to consult with an attorney, but from the bank's perspective, these withdrawals are permitted." Permitted. I ended the call without saying goodbye. For the next 2 days, I tried everything I could think of. I called Aaron, straight to voicemail. I texted him, "We need to talk about the money." No response. I contacted the mortgage company, explaining the situation, asking if there was any way to delay payments. "I am sorry, ma'am," the representative said. "We can discuss hardship options, but missed payments will still be reported." I tried to calculate how long I could hold on. It was not long. 2 months, maybe less. I went through every account again, every line, every number, hoping I had missed something. I had not. The reality settled in slowly, like something sinking beneath the surface. I was not just dealing with betrayal, I was losing my home. When I called my mother, I already knew how it would go. Still, I needed to try. "Mom, I need help," I said as soon as she picked up. There was a pause. "What happened?" I swallowed. "Aaron and Lauren, they were together. They took money. I might lose the house." Silence. Then a sigh. "Claire, you always make things more dramatic than they need to be." I closed my eyes. "I'm not exaggerating. You should have paid more attention. Men do not just do things like that for no reason." My chest tightened. "So, this is my fault?" "I am just saying you have to take responsibility for your own life." I let out a slow breath. "I called because I needed help." Another pause. "I cannot get involved in this," she said finally. The line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long time. By the time the foreclosure notice came, I wasn't even surprised. It arrived in a plain envelope, the kind that doesn't look important until you open it. I sat at the kitchen table and read it twice. Then a third time. 2 months. That was how long I had. Packing up the house felt like dismantling something I'd spent years building. Every box, every item, every memory felt heavier than it should have. On my last night there, I sat on the floor of the empty living room. No furniture, no noise, just walls. I thought about everything I had believed, everything I had trusted, and how quickly it had all disappeared. The shelter was something I never imagined for myself. Safe Harbor was on the other side of the city, a building I'd passed before without ever really seeing. Now it was the only place I had left. The woman at the front desk gave me a clipboard and a small, tired smile. "Just fill this out, honey." I sat down in a plastic chair and started writing. Name, age, emergency contact. I hesitated at that last one. Then I left it blank. That's where I met Renee. She was sitting a few chairs down, watching me with a kind of quiet understanding. "First time?" she asked. "Yeah." I nodded. "Yeah." She gave a small, knowing smile. "You'll be okay," she said. "It doesn't feel like it right now, but you will." I wanted to believe her, but sitting there, holding that clipboard, I realized something I'd never felt in my life before. I had lost control of everything. Chapter 4. A week passed before anything changed. At the shelter, time moved differently. Days blurred together, measured by meal times, intake hours, quiet lights out routines. I stopped thinking too far ahead because there was nothing ahead I could control. I focused on small things, keeping my space clean, showing up on time for the few temporary shifts I managed to pick up at a nearby clinic, trying not to think about the house, the money, or the people who had taken both. That was when the front desk called my name. "Claire Mitchell?" I looked up, confused. "Yeah? There's a call for you." I frowned. No one called me anymore. I walked over slowly and picked up the receiver. "Hello?" A man's voice answered, calm and professional. "Miss Mitchell, my name is Daniel Hargrove. I am an attorney based in Raleigh. I believe I have been trying to locate you for several months." I tightened my grip on the phone. "I think you have the wrong person." "I do not believe so," he said. "We identified you through your Social Security records and credit history after your address changed. Your file was flagged when your previous residence went into foreclosure." My heart skipped. "What is this about?" There was a brief pause. "It concerns the estate of a man named Thomas Mitchell." The name hit me like something distant and half forgotten. My father. I had not heard anyone say his name in years. "I think you are mistaken," I said quietly. He left a long time ago. I understand that is what you may have been told, Daniel replied gently, but I can assure you that is not accurate. He passed away late last year, and you are listed as the sole beneficiary. For a moment, I could not speak. I think you should come into my office, he continued. There are documents you need to see. I almost said no. Everything in me resisted the idea of opening another door I did not understand, but something deeper made me answer. Okay. 2 days later, I sat across from him in a quiet office in Raleigh. Daniel Hargrove was in his 50s, composed, the kind of man who spoke carefully and did not rush his words. There was another man in the room, introduced as a private investigator named Mark Ellis. Daniel folded his hands on the desk. Before we begin, I want to clarify how we found you, he said. I nodded, still unsure how any of this was real. When your father passed, we attempted to contact you using the last known address we had on file. That correspondence was returned. From there, we accessed public records, including Social Security updates and credit activity. Mr. Ellis assisted in locating your current situation. Mark gave a small nod. You moved recently. It made it harder, but not impossible. I swallowed. So you have been looking for me this whole time? Yes, Daniel said, because your father wanted to make sure you were found. The words felt strange. My father, wanting anything to do with me. Daniel opened a folder and slid a document across the desk. This is his will. I looked down at the paper, but my eyes blurred. I thought he left, I said quietly, when I was a kid. Daniel leaned back slightly. He did leave your home, he said, but not by choice. I looked up at him. What does that mean? He exchanged a glance with Mark, then continued. Your father attempted to maintain contact with you for several years after the separation. We have records of letters, financial support attempts, and multiple legal inquiries regarding visitation. My chest tightened. No, I whispered. That is not what I was told. I understand, he said gently, but we have documentation that indicates otherwise. He reached into the folder again and pulled out a stack of copies. These are letters he sent between 2008 and 2015. They were returned or went unanswered. My hands shook as I picked one up. My name was on the front, written in a way I did not recognize but somehow felt familiar. I never saw these, I said. Daniel nodded. We believe they were intercepted. I did not need him to say who. My mind went straight to my mother. The room felt smaller. He kept trying, Daniel said, for years. I stared at the letter, unable to open it yet. For a moment, everything else faded. The betrayal, the money, the house. All of it shifted under something much older. I set the letter down carefully. What happened to him? Daniel's expression softened. He built a company, a logistics firm based in San Diego, Hale Freight Systems. It grew significantly over the last decade. I blinked. Logistics, I repeated. The word felt like a strange echo. Aaron, Daniel continued. He never remarried, no other children. According to the will, his entire estate is left to you. I felt like I was hearing someone else's life being described. How much? I asked, my voice barely steady. Daniel hesitated, then answered. The total valuation is still being finalized, but the liquid assets alone are in the mid-six figures. There are also business holdings. I leaned back in my chair. This did not make sense. None of it did. There is more, Mark said quietly. I looked at him. What? He shifted slightly, as if choosing his words carefully. Your sister has been in contact with your father in the past. My stomach dropped. What? Daniel nodded. We have records of financial transfers made to her between 2019 and 2021, approximately $75,000. I felt the air leave my lungs. No. Those payments stopped abruptly, he continued. Based on our understanding, your father became aware of certain behaviors he did not approve of. Greed, manipulation, the same patterns, just aimed at a different target. She knew, I said slowly. Neither of them contradicted me. The room went quiet. All the pieces that never made sense began to fall into place. This was not random. This was not impulsive. This was calculated. Lauren had known there was money. Maybe not exactly how much, but enough. Enough to come back into my life. Enough to stay in my house. Enough to take more. I pressed my hands together, trying to steady myself. Daniel slid another envelope toward me. "This is a letter your father wrote for you. He asked that it be given to you directly." I stared at it for a long time before picking it up. My name was written on the front again. Claire. Just that. I opened it slowly. The handwriting inside was careful, deliberate. He wrote about leaving, about trying to come back, about being told he was not wanted. He wrote about watching from a distance, about building something in the hope that one day he could give it to me. He wrote about regret, about missing birthdays, about wondering if I hated him, and at the end, he wrote that he never stopped thinking of me as his daughter. By the time I finished reading, my vision was blurred. I had spent years believing a version of the truth that was never real. All that anger, all that distance, built on something that had been taken from me. I folded the letter carefully, holding it in my hands like it might disappear. For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt something other than fear. Not peace, not yet, but something close to clarity. Daniel cleared his throat gently. "There are immediate matters we can assist you with," he said. "We can arrange an advance from the estate to help stabilize your situation." I nodded slowly. Okay. The next few weeks moved quickly, faster than I expected. With Daniel's help, I received enough to leave the shelter. It was not the full estate, but it was enough to get a small apartment in Durham and cover basic expenses. Leaving Safe Harbor felt strange. Renee hugged me before I left. "You are getting out," she said with a small smile. "Do not come back here." "I will not," I promised. For the first time in months, that promise felt possible. I found work at a veterinarian clinic in Durham run by Dr. Patel. It was not glamorous, but it was steady, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like I was building something again. That's when I met Ryan Carter. He was a financial advisor recommended by Daniel. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said during our first meeting, "but we are going to go step by step." I nodded, feeling completely out of my depth. "I don't even know where to start." "That's okay," he replied. "Most people don't. We'll start with the basics: budgeting, credit, understanding your accounts." At first, I made mistakes. I overspent in small ways, things I told myself I deserved after everything. I misunderstood how credit utilization worked and saw my score dip. Ryan pointed it out without judgment. "This is normal," he said. "You're learning." Slowly, things began to shift. I tracked my spending, I built a plan, and I started to understand where my money was going and why. More importantly, I started making decisions on my own. No one else was controlling it. No one else was taking from it. One evening, sitting alone in my small apartment, I looked around at the space I had created. It was not much, but it was mine. And for the first time, I realized something that hadn't felt true in a long time. I was no longer waiting for someone else to decide what happened to me next. Chapter 5. By the time 2025 came around, my life looked nothing like it had before. And for once, that was not something I feared. I was still in Durham, but I was no longer in that small apartment. I had bought a modest house on a quiet street, the kind where neighbors waved when they passed by and dogs barked behind white fences. It was not extravagant, but it was mine, in a way nothing had ever been before. Every bill was paid on time. Every account was in my name. Every decision ran through me and only me. There was a calm in that kind of control. Not the kind that comes from having everything perfect, but the kind that comes from knowing no one else can take it from you without your permission. I had not spoken to my mother in almost a year, not since the day she hung up on me. But some conversations do not disappear just because you avoid them. They wait, and eventually they find you again. She showed up unannounced one afternoon. I had just gotten home from work, still in my scrubs, when I saw her car in the driveway. For a second, I considered turning around and leaving, but I did not. I walked up to the front door and opened it. She was standing there like she still belonged. "Claire," she said, like it was just another day. I stepped inside, leaving the door open behind me. "What are you doing here?" She looked around the house, taking everything in. "This is nice," she said. "I did not realize you were doing so well." I did not respond to that. "Why are you here?" She sighed, like I was the difficult one. "I think we should talk." I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "About what?" Her eyes shifted, just for a moment. "I heard about your father." The word landed differently now. Not heavy, not confusing, just a fact. "What about him?" I asked. She hesitated. "I think you misunderstood some things back then." I let out a quiet breath. "No," I said. "I did not misunderstand. I was lied to." Her expression tightened. "I did what I thought was best for you." "You kept him away from me," I said, my voice steady, "for years." "He left," she snapped. "He chose to leave." I shook my head. "He tried to come back. He wrote letters, he sent money. You blocked all of it." Her face went pale. For the first time, she looked uncertain. "That is not how it happened," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I have the letters," I replied. "I have the records." Silence stretched between us. All the power she used to hold over me felt smaller now, distant. She looked around the room again, like she was searching for something to hold on to. "I was protecting you," she said finally. "From what?" She did not answer, because there was no answer that made sense. I pushed myself off the wall. "You made your choices," I said, "just like I made mine." Her eyes filled with something I could not quite read. Regret, maybe, or just the realization that she no longer had control. "This does not have to be the end," she said quietly. "It already is." I walked to the door and opened it wider. She stood there for a moment, then picked up her purse. As she passed me, she paused. "You always were too cold," she said under her breath. I did not respond, because for the first time, I did not need her to understand me. After she left, the house felt quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet. Not empty, just peaceful. A few weeks later, Daniel called me. He said, "There have been developments." "What kind of developments?" "It concerns your former husband and your sister." I sat down slowly. "Go on." "There's an active civil case being filed against them," he said. "A business associate of your father discovered irregularities tied to financial activity connected to both of them." My stomach tightened slightly, but not in the way it used to. "How much?" He said, "Approximately $400,000 in disputed funds." I closed my eyes for a second. That number was not random. It was escalation. "What happens now?" I asked. Daniel said, "Their accounts are being frozen. They are under investigation. Travel restrictions may apply." I let out a slow breath. "Thank you for telling me." After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, letting it settle. I had not done anything to them. I had not needed to. Life had a way of balancing things on its own. Over the next few months, bits and pieces reached me through people, through quiet conversations, through things not meant for me, but impossible to avoid. They were not together anymore. At first, they tried to stay united, presenting a front, blaming outside pressure. But pressure has a way of breaking weak foundations. They started turning on each other, blaming, accusing, trying to shift responsibility. I heard that arguments became constant, that neighbors had called in complaints more than once. Lauren lost contact with most of her friends. People did not want to be associated with someone under investigation. Her world shrank. Aaron's did too. Without steady income, with accounts frozen, with legal fees piling up, he was stuck. The life they thought they were building together collapsed under the weight of what they had done. And I watched it from a distance, not with satisfaction, not exactly, but with a kind of understanding. This was what happens when you build something on lies. The last time I saw Lauren was almost a year after everything ended. She showed up at my door late in the afternoon. For a moment, I did not recognize her. She looked thinner, tired, like the version of herself she used to present had finally worn off. "Claire," she said softly. I did not invite her in. "What do you want?" She glanced down at her hands. "I just need to talk." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "Talk." She swallowed. "I messed up," she said. "I know that. I know I hurt you." I said nothing. "I just need some help," she continued. "Things are bad right now. The case, the money, I do not have anywhere to go." There it was. Not an apology, a request. "How much?" I asked. She looked up, surprised. "I don't know. Just enough to get back on my feet." I studied her for a long moment. This was the same pattern. Different circumstances, same approach. "I cannot help you," I said. Her face fell. "Please," she said. "I'm your sister." I shook my head. "You were my sister when you stood in my house and took everything from me." Tears filled her eyes. "I was not thinking straight." "You were thinking clearly enough to plan it," I replied. She flinched. "I have nowhere else to go," she said. For a moment, there was silence. Then I spoke. "You made choices," I said. "Now you live with them." She stared at me, searching for something. Sympathy, weakness, anything she could use. She did not find it. "You really are different now," she whispered. I nodded. "Yes." She stood there for a second longer, then turned and walked away. I watched her leave without calling her back, without second-guessing myself. That night, I sat on my porch as the sun went down, the sky fading into soft shades of orange and gray. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the loss, the truth I had uncovered, and the life I had built after all of it. I used to think revenge meant making someone feel the same pain they caused you. Now I understood something else. Sometimes it's just about not letting them take anything more from you. Not your time, not your peace, not your future. If you were in my place, after everything that happened, after everything they did, would you have helped her, or would you have walked away like I did?